Brain rot. It's the word of the year chosen by Oxford Dictionary. The supposed deterioration of a person's mental or intellectual state, especially viewed as a result of overcompensation of material, particularly online content, considered to be trivial or unchallenging. And I think that brain rot is a symptom of the most dangerous thing that humanity has ever created: social media. And I believe this. Well, follow me on this. Our brains are excellent at making snap judgments about the world, and it does so because it's a heuristics calculator, right? What that means is it's able to take complex information, the infinite amount of sensory data that we get in, takes it in, compresses it, and then redelivers an actionable plan built off of that. We don't need to know everything about us in order to act. In the process of this modeling, it creates a narrative, right? This is how we understand our ethics, our sense of self, our religious beliefs. All of these things are tied into our brain's ability to model itself, and in the process, tells itself a story, right? And this is why philosophies and religions and politics, all these things, help us further refine our understanding of ourselves and our story. It helps us tell a better story that's more and more in line with reality. And as you go along in your life, you'll pick up little morsels, little trinkets of information that help reinforce your worldview. But also in the process, you're actively avoiding uncomfortable information that challenges your narrative, right? People are notoriously bad at dealing with internal consistencies and cognitive biases, right? We are generally blind to them a lot of times. And you can see this whenever you criticize somebody, right? People get very sensitive about it. And the reason why is because you're directly targeting an aspect of their narrative. And by doing so, you're starting to pull back the veil to reveal that we exist in an existentially absurd world. This is why our brain relies on the narrative. It helps us stay on path, on task, and we have a vision for the future. However, a lot of people will willfully allow untruth, biased information to seep into their awareness, and they will roll that information into their narrative. And the more and more somebody does this, the more divergent their view, their narrative of the world becomes from the world, until it becomes a dead end, sometimes literally. And this information, right, this is known by social media companies. Social media companies have hijacked our neurological biases in order to make money. They have spent billions of dollars and decades of time to understand what makes you look at your phone screen for as long as possible in order to make money off of your attention. As we've evolved over time, as our technology has increased, we've expanded the virtual landscape, right? A whole new domain of information. And in the process, so too, our narratives have expanded into this new landscape. But the information that we encounter is artificially constructed, and it's artificially delivered to us through the algorithm. Now, the algorithm is actually just multiple algorithms, but we'll call it the algorithm to make it extra scary. But what the algorithm is everything that you watch, for how long, where at what time, everything about your online information consumption is recorded and fed into the respective social media outlets' algorithm to learn about you. Through machine learning especially, we now have the algorithm modeling your attention. All of our attention is being modeled by a profile that it has on us. Which means the reason why you're watching this video is likely because the algorithm fed it to you. And The most insidious part about this is the social engineering aspect, right? Because this changes people, right? You no longer you're an active participant in the decisions that you make in your life. Who you wish to be is no longer a decision of your own making, but instead something entirely constructed by an algorithm. You become a puppet to an unthinking, self-modeling engine of your own attention. It rips open and shows the worst aspect of who you really are. So, what do you do about it? Right? Because all of us know friends and family who not only have they dove into the deep end with this algorithmic narrativization, they are willingly walking off of a cliff. So how do you deal with this, with all the doom and gloom? I actually think that there's a very hopeful answer to this. And it's by taking advantage of the very system that social media algorithms leverage against us, right? We are fundamentally social, empathetic creatures that are seeking out narratives to unify with each other in order to have a firm understanding and vision for the future. The reason why humans are as successful as we are is because we're cooperative. The truth now matters more than ever, but the way you deliver the truth matters even more. Right? You cannot deliver counterfactuals to a person and change their mind, and in fact, it will more likely reinforce their narrative through the blowback effect. So instead, the truth has to be delivered in a different way. It requires a payload, an injection method to bypass just getting into a back and forth about objective reality, and instead, the payload becomes a narrative. And that's how you introduce the truth again. And there's a case study for this. Look at Bernie Sanders. Recently, Trump suggested that he turn Canada into the 51st state to avoid the economic damage of his potential tariff war that he wants to have with Canada, right? And Bernie Sanders said, I'm all for it. But he did a lot more than that. He used the ridiculous premise, right, of making Canada the 51st state as a means to present his own narrative, right? A narrative that resonates far more than people who would care about Canada becoming another state, right? His narrative is that we deserve better. Trump has suggested that Canada become the 51st state in our union, Sanders wrote. Does that mean that we can adopt the Canadian healthcare system and guarantee healthcare to all, lower the cost of prescription drugs, and spend 50% less per capita on healthcare? I'm all for it. Instead of disagreeing with Trump, he agrees, and not just agrees, he explains why Trump is right in order to use that as the payload to introduce his own narrative, right? One that brings more people towards him. By doing this, by not engaging in the debate, but instead creating an alternative narrative as a way to get his views in front of an audience that otherwise wouldn't hear it. His statement went viral on multiple conservative platforms, reaching potentially millions and millions of people who otherwise would have not have heard that there is a viable, there's a world that you can imagine where healthcare is not something lorded over you and you become a victim of. No, he instead is providing people across the political spectrum a different story that's worth telling. One that resonates and will continue to resonate throughout time, right? He understands the importance of creating narratives that don't just resonate, but reunify, right? Instead of combating an alternative narrative, you introduce a better one that's more robust, one that is more accommodating to people, right? Acknowledge their their fears and their concerns by not sweeping the legs out from under their own narrative, but by propping it up and introducing an alternative view of it. And I think that by emulating Sanders' strategy here, you have to understand what it is you want. You have to understand what it is that you're actively fighting for, what you believe in, and what you believe that everyone has a right to have. In this case, healthcare, right? We can undermine the power and influence that social media has wrought upon us, that has largely, I think, is at fault for why our society is going in the direction that it is. But I think there's a way to combat it. And it's creating your own narrative and making it resonate with far more people than whatever division that we're currently facing. We can do better. And we will.